I'll probably be the lone dissenter of the board, but I did appreciate that we had a good group of people in the audience tonight representing both sides of the argument. I think that's the important thing for the town, is to have a conversation about this issue, really understand it, really think about it from all the different angles. So I appreciated that this conversation that we're having, and of course echo the sentiments of everybody, pretty much to a man and woman, that we thank the Charter Commission for the efforts of everything they did. 2 years, it's a lot of work, and I appreciate it personally. So with that said, I'm going to be voting no on the charter on April 2nd, where I'll be voting along with everyone else in this town for a future government that I feel best represents and protects the interests of the people of North Attleboro. I'm voting no at a very basic level because I believe the charter goes too far in the centralization of authority and placing decision-making into the hands of too few people. And this is not just some philosophical concern. I'm going to point to real-life scenarios to explain why I'm supportive of more modest reforms while retaining more of the critical checks and balances and protections that I believe are very strong in our current form of government. When it comes to day-to-day operations of any enterprise, including town government, I agree, and I think that streamlined processes and decision-making are generally a good thing. However, I also believe that when the town faces really important paradigm-shifting decisions as a resident, as a parent, as a taxpayer, or an employer in town, you really need to think about who you want making those critical decisions and how those decisions are made. And I think this is where the charter falls off a bit. So in just a moment, I'll talk a little bit about what might have happened if the override hadn't passed last April. Some hard decisions that I think we would have had to be made. And that was one of the reasons, quite frankly, why I ran for this office in the first place, was kind of the situation that we found ourselves in financially. And I really believe that we need people we can trust, right, who are empowered. I think that's the critical part, who are empowered to look out for our best interests as a community when the chips are down and when it matters most. So to me, when the town is really up against it, outside of the day-to-day business, right, when things really matter, and I think our current form of government, with a directly elected executive branch and multiple checks and balances built into the system, particularly around the budget and how the town spends its money, better represents and protects the interests of the town and its people than does the proposed charter. So in thinking about this vote, as I just mentioned, I'm reminded of last April's vote for the override. At that time, I argued, and I wrote a piece for the Sun Chronicle as well at the time, that no matter which way you voted on the override, there was a price to be paid. There's a definite choice that you had to make, and there was a price to be made for either choice, a yes vote or a no vote. If you voted no, for the override, there would have been another school closure, Roosevelt. Definitely more teacher layoffs. There would have been less firefighters. There would have been less police officers. Worse response times. It would have impacted everybody, particularly our most vulnerable. We may have lost the accreditation of our library. The high school was in danger of losing its accreditation. The list went on. If you voted yes, your taxes were going to go up. Some of our poorest residents might struggle. Some businesses would be negatively impacted by the tax shift to the commercial side for commercial properties. So there was a price. There was a price we paid for both of those decisions. And at that time, we had to make a choice as a town on the future direction we wanted to take. In that case, with the override, we made some changes that many thought weren't possible, and we got this town into much more solid financial footing. And to me, that was quite an accomplishment and really changed the direction of this town and the way we were headed. So in the case of the charter, I think we also face a choice. There's a price we're being asked to pay for a yes or a no vote. There are definitive trade-offs we're being asked to make to achieve the goals the charter is striving for. And this is a point that I think is being missed or glossed over or dismissed by some. And I think it's incredibly important to call that out, though, because I believe it's at the root of what's causing a lot of consternation among those of us who disagree that the charter is the best town for the best path forward for the town we love. It's a town that we're passionate about, that we're given so many days and hours of our lives in service to. That I'm here tonight with a Achilles tendon that's torn ridiculously. Because I wanted to come here tonight and make sure I got my opinion heard. And I'll just do an aside. I think passions run deep, right? Because we care so much, right? And I just want everyone to kind of be cognizant of that and remember where people are coming from. And let's just remember that in kind of how we approach each other when we're having these conversations. So for the charter, here are some of the prices that I think we're being asked to pay. And I'm going to tie it back to the override again, particularly what could have happened if the override failed. So most notably, to me, the elimination of the elected positions, the Board of Selectmen, and replacing them with an appointed, and in my opinion, overly empowered town manager. While I'm supportive of a town manager in general and in principle, to be frank, this one seems more like an unelected mayor to me. And it's funny, I think, many of those that support a mayoral council form of government, I think there was quite a few, I believe, may even vote against the charter because they believe that if we create such a powerful executive position, it really should be elected. Not just 9 people on a council, and quite frankly, it's not a popularity contest. It's democracy, and for me, that's really important, is being able to elect my executive directly. Another thing that I think some people have actually mentioned tonight, but I think is more important than a lot of people realize, and it's kind of informed by my own personal experience in town here and being a part of the government in different branches, is the elimination of the Finance Committee, which gives people outside of the administration a voice and influence over where and how the government spends its money. The budget is pretty much the driver of everything government does. It impacts all of us who live and work in this town, everything we do in this town. You hate to say it, but it's money talks, right? Money really drives everything that we do from a services perspective. And I remember, as a member of the Finance Committee, passionately arguing to increase funding for the schools. During the lean years when we were making cuts everywhere, right, and the town was just in a terrible financial state, and that was just a year ago. School funding per pupil was in the bottom 1% to 2% in the entire state. To me, that was unacceptable, and it's one of the main reasons why I got involved in politics in the first place. It's why I joined the Finance Committee. When I saw Allen Avenue School close, I saw a fire station being shut down for periods of time. To me, it was time. It was time to get involved, and it really called everything that was happening. Really called into question for me the way the town was prioritizing the allocation of its budget, and that's the key. And I know some people in this room might bristle at the suggestion. I'm sorry, but the administration is not always right. There's a lot to be said for bodies like the Finance Committee, like the Board of Selectmen, like RTM, to look out for the interests of the residents when the town might be missing the mark. And for me, that's one of the critical things we would be losing by adopting this charter is just those checks and balances, particularly around the budget, which again is the driver of so much of what our government is all about and what we do. So back to the override. Think about if the override hadn't passed. The schools alone, if I recall, faced approximately $800,000 budget shortfall. This is back before the last override. For the whole town, I believe it was like 1.3 million, give or take. We'll just use, I think those were the numbers that I recall. We would, if that hadn't passed, we would have had to make some dramatic cuts. Horrendous decisions if the override had not passed. Again, that was actually another reason why I ran for selectman, is because I knew that either way, if the override passed or if it failed, I wanted to be there to help make those decisions, right? Because I felt like this was something that I could do, and it was important. I wanted to make sure that if we were going to be making those cuts, we were going to minimize the pain for the most residents, and if we were going to be, having an override, we were going to be spending those dollars efficiently. And I'm grateful I was elected, and I'm more grateful that we didn't have to make those hard decisions. But I ask you guys, as voters at home, people in the room, and even my fellow board members, when the community is really facing these hard decisions, who do you want making them? It's not who do you want making those decisions on what is cut, right, and what is funded. It's not just the day-to-day operations. It's the big decisions. An appointed town manager who may or may not live here, who is responsible and deeply embedded in the day-to-day management of town operations, but not, it's important to note, the administration of the schools. Or an elected board of selectmen, one of you from the community who have kids and families here, have a lot more skin in the game, and quite frankly, and perhaps importantly, a lot more power to make the changes to the budget than the council ever will. So given our town's sad, unfortunate history of funding our schools, particularly up until about a year ago, I know who I would trust. So we've righted that ship, and please consider that as you place your vote. So again, I'll wrap in a second, but I believe these groups, the Board of Selectmen, FinCom, RTM, based on my own personal experience and understanding of how government functions, provide valuable checks and balances. Strengthen citizen voice, provide more diverse representation, and I think most importantly, when it really matters, we'll be able to stand up for the community when we need it most. It's not just about day-to-day efficiency. It's about who you want to make the biggest and most important decisions when all the chips are down. So with that said, I implore everyone out there who's going to be voting on April 2nd, please really inspect the claims that are being made about the charter on both sides, pro and con and in between. Read the document, keep an open mind, and decide for yourself in full awareness of the trade-offs you're being asked to make which way you want to vote. It's not just about the day-to-day operations, but which form of government do you believe will really have your back when you need it most? Thank you.